Before your movie can hit the big screen and reach your audience, an invisible process needs to happen first. It is editing. Today, we are going behind the curtains into the editing suite with Veronica Lynch, a professional editor, to see how she can transform a story. Whether you are a filmmaker, cinephile, or just curious about this process, this episode is for you. So keep on watching.
Beings?
Hi, Veronica. Thank you so much for coming to the show today. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm so good. How are you?
I'm doing very well, thank you. Thank you so much for agreeing to do the show.
Thank you for having me. This is fun.
We can already tell this episode is going to be mint.
Darren's already excited. Here we go.
So for the audience who doesn't know who you are, can you give us a quick introduction?
Okay, my name's Veronica. I'm Tim's cousin.
Oh.
Yep, that's the connection
Cat's out of the bag.
My hobbies outside of film include karaoke, going to live music, and drag. And I've been working in film for like 6 years now, and I studied film at Swinburne University. I like horror films, and I like female-led action, and I have a dog.
I'm glad we got that bit out. That's the most important bit.
That's great. So for someone who is unfamiliar with filmmaking, how would you describe your role? So your role is...
So right now I've kind of moved from conform editor to online editor, but my official title is data operator IO, which doesn't really explain anything. I do lots of different processes in film to help finish it. I went to a gig recently and someone helped me describe what I do in the most perfect way to someone who does not know anything about film. What I do is I'll get a text document and I'll make it into a PDF. Except a film. So the sort of things that I do, I have a lot of different tasks and jobs. For example, one task that I might be given is something called dailies, which is where a film will go and they'll shoot their footage. And during their lunchtime and at their wrap time, they need to offload their cards immediately, get the stuff written to tape immediately, transcoded, all watched, paperwork, uploaded, et cetera, et cetera. And I'll do that process from the post-production point of view, doing all of the archiving and uploading and processing. And then so that's, something I'll do at the start of a film. But on the other hand, I'll also do mastering, which is when you have to finalize your film, which has come from the dailies, which are these low resolution HD files. I'll bring it up to a 4K Ultra HD HDR file or an IMF, something that's ready for Netflix, or a DCP, something that's ready for cinema. There's so many different files and formats and standards that are needed for different mediums of watching films. And I am the technical person who deals with all of that.
That's crazy. Like, we didn't even think about like different formats of files that you have to deal
There's
with.
so many. That's why I have to I'll quality control every different version of a file that we have for a film, and we can have so many. And every time there's a mistake, we have to remake it, and I'll have to quality control it again. So I'll watch a film like 30 times, and there's, one typical film with a distributor like Madman, for example. They'll have around 10 to 15 delivery items, and I have to watch them all, and they're all totally different from each other.
Can you tell us a bit more about these delivery items?
So delivery items, there's lots of different purposes for delivery items. So some delivery items are intended for screening, so they could be for streaming, or they could be to play kind of on Vimeo or something like that. We'll have some delivery items that are specifically for archive, so we'll have ungraded masters of the films in high quality sequence files, which could be TIFFs or DPXs. These are different ways to store images. This is probably really boring.
Not at all.
Sounds like alien language. I don't know.
Alien language? Well, it's all part of it. They're not, people aren't thinking about how things are like transferred over, right?
Yeah.
They're probably just thinking, you record
Which movie?
Yeah. Well, even beyond that, right? They're probably just thinking they get the camera, plug it in, there, it's like ready to go, right?
Yeah, that's how it works.
Yeah.
Well, no, it's really quite complicated, and there's so there's so many delivery items, and a DCP is a really popular one that probably not a lot of people know about, which is a digital cinema package, and you have to package up your movie in a certain way for it to play on projectors correctly, and then you need to make like a DSM and a DCDM for that for some reason. I don't know why that's standard. Sometimes we have to write things to CD or even Betacam tape because people don't update their spec documents of what they want, and they're stuck in the 90s. It's crazy, you know.
God. That sounds Australian though.
Yeah.
It's like we've still got the shit from like 30 years ago.
Yeah,
Can you make
like-
it work for that?
It's like, can't you just update your spec doc? And they're like, no, sweety. Why would we do
I'm the
that?
client, so why would I change anything? You change.
You
for me.
work for me.
Yeah. And like this process sounds like extremely difficult and challenging. But I want to go back into the beginning. Like, how did you get into editing?
Well, if we go way back, I was an only child and I had like a lot of spare time and I was pretty lonely. And I had a webcam and I had video, what was it? It was like Windows Movie Maker.
Yeah.
And I used to play with my Barbies on the webcam, like, la, la, la. I'm talking like 6 years old. And I'd, la, 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 la. And then I would make like, stories and I would put them into Windows Movie Maker and start editing. I was basically raised by my computer and I've always been into software. I've always been really good at it. And I was just I was that generation that I knew how to use MS Paint before I could talk. So I'm just great at it. And from then, I had a YouTube channel. I always had a camera. I was always recording myself. I had a YouTube channel when I was 12 for a few years.
Yeah.
There's some cursed shit on that. It is, yeah.
Is it still active?
It's all unlisted. So if you can have special access to my YouTube.
I was about to give her a shout out. This is the YouTube channel. Go to subscribe to it right now.
No. And then, in high school, I did media. And then I was, decided to study film. And I always was more interested in software. And I thought that kind of meant I was into editing and things like that. But it wasn't the case. I was just more into software and playing with software. And I do like storytelling, but it's not what I want to do full time. I want to work on software full time.
Oh, okay. So that's one of the dream jobs in the future. You want to develop the software that they use for editing.
Maybe in like the far future. I feel like that is a pretty cool idea if if my career.
Yeah.
I don't have any of the skills. I mean, there's been some invitation at work to like learn coding and because it's good to have in-house software and we're always trying development and stuff like that. But at the moment I love breaking software and troubleshooting it and trying to find bugs in industry standard software. But troubleshooting, I love troubleshooting because I always get to the bottom of it. I always figure it out.
And that's one of the roles in the industry as well. There's the role called penetration test.
Yeah.
So where you go in and you try out software and you're trying to find out the problems with the software.
Yeah. I do know one person who works at Blackmagic and he does that for the VFX side of DaVinci Resolve, which is the industry standard software that we use. And it's a cool job. He just gets to play on do whatever he wants.
Let me try to break the software today.
Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome. So I want to go back to the time where you play with Barbies and in front of the camera. Okay, so let's say you have a story, and from then until now, how do you decide which scenes to keep and which scenes to cut?
Well, I think the thing when I did do that sort of editing, it's so intuitive sometimes, and you feel it. It's not like you bring all the scenes in and you keep them all and then you start dropping. You just I would always take things one shot at a time. So I'd look at this shot, say it's like I've got one person to the left of frame and it's a mid shot, and I'm like, okay, what feels correct? What's the feeling? Do I want him to feel like claustrophobic? Do I put someone on the same side of the screen as him, or do I want him to feel far away from someone? So it's always just been about intuition for me and not about what do I keep, what do I throw. It's just what feels like it's going to draw the right emotion out,
So if that's the case, like now that you're working as a professional editor, do you have to follow storyboard? Do you have to discuss with the director on what his vision is to make sure that the story follows his vision?
Well, so I don't do any creative editing. It's all technical. So I don't do in my job, I don't do any storytelling. It's all technical. So there's an editor who they'll do the editing, and their job is completely story based, and they don't need to know they don't need to have any technical skills at all. That's why they bring in an assistant editor, and then I'll come in to do the mastering and the finalizing and the conforming and all of the invisible work that needs to be done. So I will never work with a director at that capacity.
Interesting. So basically, like, you are prepping all the ingredients before
I'm the sous chef. Yeah.
Yeah, before someone comes in and cook. Interesting.
Yeah. So I'm the sous chef. I'll make all the ingredients, make sure they're all correct, and then someone else will make the dish. And then I'm also the waiter, and I'll also serve the dish.
So
and
you
then
prep them
I
the
also
food,
eat the
and
dish.
then they make it, and then they send it out.
I do literally everything except cook it.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. That's so
Pretty much
That's the
everything
fun
but
part.
the chef. Yeah, everything but the chef. Don't get the cook.
Yeah.
So if that's the case, like, do you get to sit in with the editor when they follow the story?
No. I pretty much like the only time I'll work with the editor. In an ideal, it's different for every film and every budget, but in an ideal world, I'll never deal with the editor. We will never come into contact. I will only come into contact with the post-production supervisor and the assistant editor. However, a lot of the time, films don't have budgets for assistant editors, so I have to deal with the editor, which is always hard because editors need to deliver certain documents to me for me to do my work. So these documents are called EDLs, AAFs, and QuickTimes. QuickTimes are just video files of the film. EDLs and AAFs, they're kind of decision lists of their edit cuts so that I can take, their low-res footage and bring it up to the 8K footage that was filmed. When I'm working with editors who their only job is to tell a story and use their intuition and be amazing creative artists, it's really hard to get them to understand why I need things to be technically correct for this film to materialize. And they don't want to do the work, but oh my God. However, in an ideal world, I'll never deal with editors.
So usually there's like a level before it even hits you almost. Like,
Yeah.
You shouldn't have to deal with that kind of stuff.
Exactly, yeah.
It should be sent to you as good or perfect as much as they can, essentially.
I'm very removed from the creative process, which I find like quite a relief because I need to focus on the technical for this film. However, again, like when budgets are small, sometimes the editor finishes before the director has the opportunity to make all the creative changes that they want to. So I'll end up being stuck, with the director, and they'll make edit decisions when we're in the online. The online process is when you kind of look at titles and supers and VFX, finalizing things, and they'll be like, "Oh, we need to move the one frame this way, and we need to," geez. So sometimes they might ask for my perspective, which I'll give, but it's because I work with a company, I'm not really in the business of giving my opinion so much as just doing the work and being the monkey. So it's really hard when that happens, and I have like, I think this cut's awful, but what am I meant to say?
It's not your job to.
It's not my job. They're the director.
It.
Yeah, I have to be like, everything you do is perfect. Pay us.
And this is something that a lot of people, and especially filmmakers, don't really know. Like when you get into a production team, it's like 50% working in team, working with other people, very corporate like in a way as well. Like the director is a CEO, like everything that they say you have to follow, and you have to work with different teams with different perspective and priorities as well. But I want to get your opinion on this as well. Since you've been working in the industry for a long time, do you have an example of a good edit? Like when you look at it from far away, or when you watch the final product, you say, "Yep."
You can always tell when a horror film has been edited well. I think one film that I really liked was Descent.
Yeah.
You can, whenever the jump scares actually get you. And films like, Nosferatu that play really well with jump scares and kind of bringing feeling from deep cuts, quick cuts, and then holding on the right moments. Also films like, who's the director of Midsummer and Hereditary?
Yeah, I know. I can
And
see him.
which, kind of, I find films with that are good psychological thrillers, they know when to hold on a shot to
build a suspense rather
build
than
anticipation and fear.
Ari Aster.
Ari Aster, that's Midsummer. And then Roger Eggers.
Robert Eggers is
Yeah.
Nosferatu.
Nosferatu
Witch,
and Witch. I love
Lighthouse.
Witch. Yeah.
Because I feel like that's like the trope in horror films, right? The like jump scare. Whether it's earned or not, right? You kind of sitting there. Yeah, it's just like, shit, you got me, but it's like, was it like,
come on.
like when you get back to it, it's like, well, was that like, it was just there to like get a quick scare rather than like, play throughout whatever that, is happening in the story.
And this is something that I really wish that the Vietnamese horror movies do well, because nowadays I've been following the Vietnamese cinema, and there are a lot of horrors, but they always try to put the jump scares in just for the sake of them. They don't really plan for them. They don't really have any suspense before the jump scares. And then we're like, yeah, here's a jump scare, here's a monster. Feel afraid. And everyone is like, okay.
It's cheap.
Yeah.
Cheap tactic.
And I think that affects the quality of the movies a lot, even though they have put a lot of effort, a lot of investment into the shot and the actors and things like that. But when the edit is bad, that's the final product that you see, isn't it?
Yeah, it sticks out. What do they say? Like, you can never really tell when an edit or a sound design is good. You can tell when it's bad, though. Because it cuts, like, I've worked on a lot of films that cut around too much. And, like, why are we chopping? Why do we keep looking? And sometimes editors, they don't cut to feeling, they cut to continuity, or because he makes a weird face and it wasn't working, and they just can't find the balance, or it was a bad take, or it could also be like the actors were not working in this scene and they couldn't figure it out, or the script is bad. But there's lots of reasons an edit could be bad, but when an edit's bad, it stinks.
And you reminds me of a very interesting story. So Martin Scorsese, he has a list of priorities of the edit. So when people watch his films, they notice a lot of continuity issues. So in one shot, this actor is holding a bottle of beer. In the next shot, he doesn't. But he said that the priority for his movie is all about the consistency of emotions.
Yeah.
If I have that take and that emotion is correct, I would rather use that take rather than the correct one.
And that just makes total sense, because when I've always found that when films are good and they draw you in and they're full of emotion and story, you don't notice any of the continuity issues. You don't notice any QC errors. You're just watching the film for the film. So as long as you're drawn in, that's you've won.
Because people are usually willing to forgive those mistakes because they're not watching for that. But when it's like a bit off, you're like, why is that there?
Yeah.
You're nitpicking.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's when you know that your movie failed, because now they're paying attention to all the
things you don't want them to, right? I feel like that happens a lot more now. Sometimes when you're watching a film, you're like, ugh.
Can you think of a good example for a bad editing? I'm pretty sure.
I can't. I'm like worried I can't say any of them because I've worked on them. Let me think of one that I haven't worked on. There's always going to be.
Did you ever watch the old Suicide Squad? With
I watched the Birds of Prey, actually.
Well, no, because lots of people go to that old
as bad editing.
Yeah, because they got like different. It's not like a film editor. They got like
the trailer editor.
Yeah, they trailer editor to edit the film.
Strange.
So when you watch it,
choppy.
it feels like that. You're like watching a trailer, and it's like, why are they doing all these weird cuts and stuff?
Well, to be fair, that the trailer of that movie is sick though.
Well, too bad the movie's terrible.
I know. I got hooked from watching the trailer, and I got so excited for that movie. I dragged my wife. I bought the tickets 1 month in advance. I was like, I'm going to get the gold class ticket to go to Village Cinema. I got to the cinema. They ran out of showing time, so I had to drive to a different cinema. And then I watched it, and I was like,
that was shit.
What have I done? what have I done to myself?
Well, it's like a pretty much guarantee that a Marvel film is going to have bad editing. I just don't watch them. Or Marvel, DC, the superhero big blockbuster films are just, I just know they're going to be shit because people are going to go watch them because of the trailers and because of the actors and it's the heroes. Henry Cavill.
But it's even lost a bit of that now. People are like a bit disillusioned by it. Now they're just like, well, I don't know if I want to watch it anymore. They're not really good films anymore.
The new Captain America just hit theater.
Yeah, I know that
this
hasn't
week.
got a good reception either.
Yep.
But
Oh, really?
So far.
yeah, but I don't know.
What a surprise.
I wasn't that because people are like, oh, but Harrison Ford's in it. But mate, he's been looking for paychecks forever. he doesn't care. They probably like, here's $50 million. All right, I'll be in it.
Sorry,
I'll have another
Harrison.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm.
Sorry, Harrison. Yeah.
He doesn't care. He doesn't
Yeah,
care.
we know he's watching.
Yeah. She's like the one guy that watches this.
Now that I'm on, hi Harry.
No, I mean, if we're going to use that example, the Suicide Squad movie has so many bad edits. And I think one of the things that I remember from that movie is just the inconsistency of styles. So in the beginning, you have like this dark color with Harley Quinn in the cell. And then when they introduced the characters, they had all these 3D block text banging on the screen, showing all the effects and stuff. And then they have a lot of the neon colors. It's just very inconsistent. And I want to ask for your expertise. So let's say we take a scene out of that movie, maybe the introduction of the characters. How would you, like in your opinion, how would you change to make it better?
I haven't seen Suicide Squad.
That's good. You're not missing out on anything.
Perfect.
So what if, is there a scene in particular that you think that you can make it better by changing some of the editing?
Well, like say, there's a film which I think introduces characters and in like a really kind of comic-y, superhero exciting way is Scott Pilgrim versus the World.
Okay.
That's a good film. That's a great sort of, it's true to the comic book style or even like any kind of Tarantino film as well. When you're dealing with superheroes and these sorts of kind of fantastical characters, you need to pay very intense homage.
Yeah, that's all right.
Fromage. You need to pay fromage to the comic books, you know, like the style, the pop art, the kind of the pace at which you read a comic, you know. So it's the choppy, exciting, vibrant kind of look at life. That's what makes those sorts of hero films good. And yeah.
As you say that, I think, did you ever watch the old Hulk movie with Eric Bana? And how they really tried to lean into that comic book editing style, like literally like frames that like shoot frames like a comic book. And it really didn't work in that film. I know there's a lot of other stuff that didn't work in, but it's just such a weird, like, because they're like, oh, it's a comic book film. Let's film it like a comic book. Like it's a cool and interesting idea, but they just don't really capitalize on it very well.
No, yeah, there's a lot of aspects to that, like the camera that you use, for example. If it looks too cinematic and all the lenses are too soft, then you're going to just look like a romance novel, you know. You need something a bit sharper, and it needs to be thought about as well in the grade and also the acting. Every aspect has to be part of your vision for it to work.
Because that also reminds me of, we were talking about Sin City. And the first one, how they like, because it's all black and white, but it's stylized in such a way that it's similar to a comic book.
Yeah.
Not the like straight out of the comic book, or like here's like a scene.
Yeah.
But the way things are shot.
Yeah, so
and colour is used.
contrasty. And
One of the things that I think a lot of people don't realize as well is like the more time you spend in the pre-production and the planning, the better your products will potentially become. And, you know, not just that, but the production process as well. But I think if we go back to Suicide Squad, I think that they don't have that plan out for since the beginning, like the style.
But that, I think it was very much of the time of like, oh, Avengers is big. We got to get our big group thing together.
Yeah.
And I don't think they're too fussed about the story or anything making sense. It's like, look, we've got Margot Robbie, we've got Will Smith before the slap. And we're like, got to build them all. You know, we've got these like big Hollywood guys. We're going to like put them together. And it's just like, they didn't really worry about all the other stuff, right? Like all the side characters die off quickly. And you're like, why have him in the film?
Like, I feel bad for Captain Boomerang. Like, he was such a good character.
Well, an Australian dude, he had a bit. I can't, what's his name? But he had a bit of a rough film go. Oh. But no, it's just funny thinking about it because it's just like they just assume the success is going to be there because of the names and like the name of it, but it never works out that well.
And, you know, not just Suicide Squad, but Justice League is a good
well,
example as well.
We don't want to jump back into our ranting about Justice League, but yeah, it's a similar kind of thing. But
doesn't matter. They make money, right?
Well, they do sometimes,
make
but
money.
that's the thing because I don't know what the Captain America will do, but I'm sure that will still make money. Like even though if it's maybe not a great film.
No, you mean like the new Captain America?
Yeah.
I think it's got like nearly $300 million.
Yeah, and it's once a week.
You don't
think so?
I don't think it's going to make the budget back.
Really?
So far, the reviews has not been good.
Review doesn't always mean it won't make money.
But plus,
No,
like,
exactly,
and
yeah.
I was just want to say, like the promotion of the movie was not that good either.
It was a bit weird, but I think
Yeah.
because I was talking to my other cousin who he's like, oh, I'm probably not going to watch it because I
Hasn't been
I don't
lucky.
more there because he hasn't because there's so many other stuff involved in Marvel. Like you got to watch the shows, you got to watch all the other movies, and then it's like. They might know who Captain America is now, and it's like, why is he Captain America? What happened to the white guy? Is what I think. It's like, oh, there's some black guy now. And it's like, well, not that it's like that was what they were going through the movies anyway, that he was going to be next, but maybe people didn't understand that he was going to get the next movie,
Yeah.
which is like another, another big disbelief. And well, even you look at America now, they're going to be like, that's a black guy. I'm not watching this. But like,
Hey, not good over there.
yeah, well, that's what I mean. Like. But that's what I mean. Sometimes the reviews don't even matter. Sometimes, like with those big. But like I said, I think a lot of people are a bit over it now. That they're like, oh, I'm not really enjoying it as much as I used to anymore. All the big show, all the good CGI and stuff doesn't make it anymore.
And obviously there are a lot of challenges with filmmaking, but I think you mentioned this before, Veronica. But what are some of the challenging aspects that you come across in your job? Besides the technical part and dealing with other people, but if we delve into just editing the movie, what would be some of the challenges that you face?
Well, yeah, like bad acting. Bad acting is really hard to fix in post. There's really nothing.
I cannot imagine.
I can just
Yeah.
imagine you getting the camera out. It's like, I'll do this better.
I mean,
Get a Barbie scene.
This woman wasn't in it
Bad-
before.
yeah. Things like bad ADR. So if they don't capture good audio on set, and it has to be ADR, which is when they record it afterwards. There's just some things you just can't record ADR for. It's just not going to work. It doesn't matter how good the actor is. It just doesn't work. Especially if the actors are working with high levels of emotion,
Yeah, it's not going to come across.
And then you hear this dialogue which has been laid over the top, and it just doesn't work. And as soon as I hear bad ADR, I'm taken out of the film. It's awful. I hate it every time, and I always pick up on it. I hate it. Things like that. Continuity, like we mentioned before, it is annoying. As long as the story's...
And especially because you're probably watching it more than a normal person as well,
Yeah.
because you've got to go over it, so you probably
Yeah.
notice it a bit quicker than anyone else.
Oh, that
Like-
bottle in the corner.
Put it down. It's not meant to be there.
The
Or
labels.
I hate when I'm watching a scene and someone has a glass of wine, and I just watch the glass go from full,
To
half
empty.
full,
Yeah.
3/4, half full. Just drives me nuts.
I'm just imagining them like drinking it and then like spitting it back into it.
Why do they drink it at all? Just like
Yeah.
do their actors sip? I don't know.
Well, yeah, that's what I mean. You don't have to drink it. You just, ooh.
Ooh. I don't know. I'm not an actor, but
That's how they get through the scene. Alcohol.
yeah, you're just, so sorry. Where's that? Bad acting is always, you can't fix it. You can't get the act. There's just nothing to do about it. You can't cut around it. That's it.
And I think that takes us to one of the movies that you worked on, The Whistleblower.
Oh yes,
The
whistleblower.
2019 movie directed by Xiao Lu Sui. I'm pretty sure I butcher his or her name, but I'm really curious to know about the process. Like, tell us the process from the beginning, like how you were involved with the movie.
Well, so it was the first film that I worked on at my job. So I was only involved in a very kind of junior capacity. And so it was very exciting for me. It was my first film credit as well.
Ooh.
Yeah, so I was almost exclusively on this film. I was quality control, and this film had so many versions. It had an international version and an Australian version, and so there's so many different deliveries. And I probably watched this film 30 plus times, like an unreal amount of times. I watched this film. Really, took any dreams I had about working in the film industry out of me. It was like, hey, first job in film, kid. Here you go. Watch this film 30 times. So it was my job on this film was purely quality control and delivery. Just watch it. And I picked up so many issues, which is why I had to watch it again. As soon as I would find one QC error, I would be like, hey, I found a QC error. Oh, we have to make the whole file again. And I have to watch it because it's a completely new render. So that was it. I just watched that film a lot.
What is an example of a QC error?
Oh, there's so many examples. One, get me excited about QC errors. One is like a dead pixel, and these are really hard to pick up. You need to have like quite a few coffees to. But when I pick them up, I feel very proud when I pick up a dead pixel. So it's literally one frame. You'll see a white pixel on screen, and it could come from the render or it could come from the camera. They're very easy to fix. They are considered QC issues, and they will not pass QC when you deliver it to a QC house, and it needs to be fixed before it reaches anyone, essentially. These things like dead pixels, they exist on old films, and this never used to be an industry standard to not allow one frame of one one pixel. Like a pixel, 4K image is like 3060 pixels by, 2106, whatever it is. One of them is white for a frame, and they say fail.
Wow.
Fail. So my job is to make sure a film doesn't fail. Another one is blanking. That's a very popular one. Blanking is when, you know how films have black like letterboxing at the top and the bottom of the film?
Yeah.
Sometimes if the editor is trying to adjust the framing of a clip, they'll push a clip too far to the side or too far down, and it creates more black pixels at the top and bottom than needed. Sometimes it's obvious, sometimes it's like 1 or 2 pixels. Either way, it's a fail. There's, 15 or, 100 pixels or 1 pixel. There's considered the same level of a fail, essentially.
Oh, wow.
So blanking is a really popular QC error. Then there's just like a lot of render errors that can happen. And I'll also check the sound to make sure nothing's totally messed up. Sometimes we have something called 2 pips, which is 2 seconds before the film, you'll get a little doop to indicate that it's 2 seconds before the program starts. Sometimes they slip into the actual film, and you're just watching the film and you hear doop, and you're like,
I'm ready to go.
But the movie has been going on for 1 hour.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's meant to
Ready
be
to
there.
start
Now, the movie's starting right now.
This is when the good bits happen.
Yeah.
Oh my god. So I'm also curious. So who is in charge of making all these standards that you have to follow?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I don't actually know who kind of creates the standards. I know that there are some kind of bodies that create some standards. Like there's the, what is it? I'm pretty sure it's the Academy have created SMPTE, which is a standard for lots of film stuff, like time code and the way DCPs are made. We're getting pretty technical here, a little bit beyond my pay rate, unfortunately. But there are large, bodies in Hollywood that they set these standards. And also things like QC, they're kind of per distribution house. So say, what's a random district, like Umbrella, they'll choose to go to a QC house in Germany, and they say they're going to do our final quality control, and whatever they say is a fail, we believe them. And because their whole existence is they're a quality control house, if there's no issues, they're like, well, we have to find some issues, so they'll be like, this is wrong, this bush isn't meant to be here, things like that. And we have to then justify, like, no, the bush is meant to be there. We have to go back and say creative intent. So it's kind of like one of those, it's like an imaginary standard. There are some, I'm sure, like TV has broadcasting, they have broadcasting standards, but in terms of QC errors, like you can flag anything as creative intent as long as it plays back correctly.
That's so interesting. Like, this is something that we didn't know about. Like, any production companies can just use a third-party quality control.
Well, often they do. Yeah, it's often part of their
isn't it?
process. Like, we obviously we quality control what we send out very thoroughly because we have good standards. But it always comes back to us, and there are houses that they have dedicated software and people just like scanning with all of this AI software to try to find any issues that could like they're using robots to find these issues, which I think is ridiculous because robots aren't watching this at the end
they're
of the
not
day,
the
right?
ones at the end of the day.
No,
yeah.
it's people are watching this.
I don't watch films anymore. I just type it AI. What's this?
AI, watch this film for me. Thank
What
you.
was Suicide Squad about? Please tell me if I would enjoy it. It's like, there was too many black dots in it. You wouldn't have liked it.
No, yeah. Too many pixels. Yeah.
True. Not enough pixels.
I went and I watched every single pixel.
There's one black pixel in the middle.
Yeah, really got me.
And speaking of tools and software, I want to know, like, what is the current software and tools that you're using for your work, and what would be the dream software and tools that you want to use in the future or for the present?
Well, for the stuff I do, when I do mastering and almost anything post-production, everything is Blackmagic, Design, DaVinci Resolve, everything. And that's kind of just, they've set the standard so high and their updates are usually pretty good. There's still a few things that could be fixed, but you just can't go anywhere else. Like, we've tried other softwares, and we do use other softwares as well. Like, for example, we haven't done dailies in a while, but we used to use Scratch for dailies to generate reports. Scratch is part of OSD, which is, I think it's, don't quote me, but I think it's in some Icelandic country. They created. They're small enough that their support team is like 2 people, and they
Wow.
made the software. But like, they have things like OSD, transcoder, and Scratch. The software is great and it's capable of a lot, but the user interface is awful and really not intuitive. The user interface kind of refers to the old way of filmmaking and editing, when you used to kind of have reels of film and you used to throw your film to the side. That's kind of how the cursor works. You kind of throw your cursor to the edge of the screen and it brings up something, or you can drag a clip and throw it off. And it's weird. It doesn't really, I don't think it's intuitive unless you're really used to throwing film on the floor like the good old days, but that's not the future of film. But Blackmagic and DaVinci Resolve, they're so progressive with their user interface. It's so easy to use, so easy to learn, but that does, in a way, make it overcomplicated as well. It does open up for more bugs because they're more focused on the design than sometimes the product. For example, they've had this so they have Fairlight, which is, they have a sound editing part of DaVinci Resolve now, and they have the regular editing, which we use for Conform and online. But they've also got Fusion now, which is for visual effects, and it's pretty fantastic, but it does come with a lot of issues, a lot of processing issues. And for example, like, we have a film that we have a fusion effect on, and I cannot, for the fucking life of me, render this fusion effect. I have to go and render, it's like 100 frames, and I can't just render the frame as a sequence. God forbid I try to render it as a ProRes or something that's not a file sequence. The only way for me to render it is to select every frame one by one, 1, 2, so I have 100 renders, and I have to keep setting them off. Like 97 will fail, 3 will complete. I delete the 3 that are completed. I go again. And every time it fails,
like
I have to hit enter.
Yeah.
I have to hit enter every time it fails. So I'm holding down the enter key, and it is just so manual and so bad. Anyway, so my dream is for Resolve to get better, I guess. But also at the same time, our computers, we just use kind of Apples and not MacBooks. What are they? They're the big trash cans. I'm not super across it. Our computers aren't beefed up or anything, but they should be fine for what I'm trying to do. So as long as the user interface is okay, I'm pretty happy with whatever software, as long as it's not buggy and it gives me the stuff does the stuff I need it to do for it to work, and doesn't spit out heaps and heaps and heaps of issues that I have to fix.
Yeah, unfortunately, that future will not happen anytime soon.
I don't know.
In terms of any software, they will always have bugs. They will always have developments and new updates, because we always have new needs and new requirements for the software. So,
well, as soon as they try to do something new, that just invites a whole flurry of different issues.
It's a process, isn't it? Like, you introduce something new. Does it work? Okay, it kind of works. It's not like working very well. So now we have to fix one issue at a time.
And then it might affect something else, and then that's now bugged, and it's like, I've got to go back and fix that, or do we take it out? Do we
Eventually, we'll go back to the film with a film, and then we have to cut it out.
Chopping it up, taping it together, putting the reel.
Speaking of that, it takes me to one of the movies like you mentioned. It's one of your favorite movies of all time. One of the Australian production, Love Serenade. It was released in 1992.
Was it 96?
96?
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah. But yeah,
in the 90s.
Yeah. Sometime in the 90s.
Yeah. Like, I'm curious, like, why do you like this movie?
Oh my God. I remember they made us watch it for film school, and I just fell in love with the characters. I love the characters so much. I relate to all of them in different ways, but especially I relate to Dimity. I really feel like a real soul connection, and I think Miranda Otto does such a good job playing this obviously autistic woman who's just she's amazing. She's just an amazing character, and how kind of expected but also unexpected her actions are. Like, of course she would do that, but also like how odd. It's just and fantastic writing. And then some of the framing, you know, they'll say like directors like who did Hitchcock, they'll say every frame a painting, like it's amazing. I feel like this film is every frame is so well thought out, especially when we're looking at that giant fish on the wall, you know?
Oh my God.
And just like the pace, the placing of the actors, you know, we've got Dimity standing there with her shoulders hunched all over in this like her weird posturing that she does.
She has that weird smile she has as well. It's kind of like, is she happy?
Mostly
Is she happy? Yeah. It's kind of like, is she really happy about what's happening?
This is one of the movies that makes me question if she's actually acting or she's like
Just
that
being,
in real life.
No, she
that's-
can't. She's definitely.
Well, I think that's the character. I think it's meant to be the idea of kind of like this awkward person. It's like in this weird, she's put herself in this weird situation that she doesn't know how to deal with. And it's all kind of it's all new to her.
Well, is it?
Well, maybe. Well, that's what it's kind of shown
Fell
to
on a
us.
chainsaw.
Yeah. Well,
They've done
leading
this
to the-
before.
Yeah.
But that's, like it's kind of like it plays off it a little bit. And that's like there are those weird things in it. Like I remember she's like, is he a fish?
Well, he's,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, he's got the gills or whatever.
he's
And I'm like,
extruding fat from his
yeah.
gills.
And it's like, what is going on
And
in
that
this
is
film?
totally out of nowhere as well. I was so surprised when I watched it. Why are they taking this direction? I guess.
Oh,
yeah.
it starts with they hook the fish, right? I don't Google films. I guess like try to understand them. I try to have my own understandings when I watch a film. And I love this fish analogy, but I also don't completely understand it as well. And the way he does get taken by the carp in the end, Ken Sherry.
Yeah.
Oh God. But I kind of love that I don't 100% understand it. It means that when I watch it again, maybe I'll understand a little bit more.
As you say, Google, that's one of my favorite things because after we watch a movie, sometimes I'm like looking just for facts or something. Usually, sometimes the first question is this movie good? Should I enjoy this film? And then what is it about?
Yeah.
And I'm like, why are you watching these films if you're not like, not that you have to like completely like grasp of what's happening, but you're like, did I watch this? Like there are like the story itself is like fine, but there are those like little weird things like fish. He's a fish now, and it's like, what is this? And like you said, and they're like talking about, why have I forgotten her name?
Vicky Ann?
Vicky Ann. Yeah, she's like, I think Dimitri's telling us, he fell on a chainsaw. I'm like, he fell on a chainsaw?
He didn't fall
Why
on a
was
chainsaw.
running?
Yeah. So it's like bringing up these like weird things.
Yeah.
And even the chef, he's like, I don't like this, but I like walking around my house naked. I really like being nude.
Yeah.
And even him, he's like, the way he like talks and does things is funny as well. But they're all a bit weird and quirky in their own ways, but it does play really well into the story because I feel like that's kind of the point. It's meant to be this odd romance of these two girls and this older man that's kind of like, he is insane as well. Like all the times he's just like, my love, they just don't understand it. I give my love. They just... And they throw it right back into my face. They just don't get it. But my love is free and open. And I'm just like, this
That was
guy,
a great Ken Sherry.
yeah, he's
What
just
the
like
hell?
really playing it off. And I'm like, this guy's just insane.
But it's so relatable. Like, I don't know, as a woman, hello, who hasn't met a man like that who just like fucks you, then discards you, and then fucks someone else, and then says, "But you know, it doesn't mean our special connection is any
Well, that's
less
the thing.
special."
He's not trying to turn away the chance again, right?
No,
Even though, like,
sleazebag.
we see later in the film, like we talked about before, when they actually are having sex, like both of the women later are just like, it's a perfect shot of him just like moving. They're just like, is this
boring.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's great with Dimitri when it must have been like the third or second time they did, and she's lying there. She's like got the smile in her, like
Yeah.
it like goes away. She's like, this isn't right, is it? Like this, she kind of like computes like, is this really worth it? But then I feel like she goes back into her thing of like kind of being madly in love with him still.
It's so relatable. I think that experience as a woman, like just sex as a form of validation. It's like you're there and you're happy because you're there and like, oh, they want to fuck me. That's amazing. And then how long does it take for you to grow up and realize, oh, I'm actually meant to enjoy sex? And that's what this film is
But
about.
even for her as Dimitri, like we're shown to her, this is like her first like experience with a man or whatever.
Yeah.
And it shows like it's such a weird like he just like abuses, not abusing maybe not the right word, but just like manipulates her to kind of like to be what he wants her to be. And then like it's like 2 days later he's already like discarded her and then slept with her sister, which is even like, even when I was thinking at the start, I'm like, oh, she really shouldn't have slept with him because she knew her sister was into him.
Yeah.
But then it didn't really matter anyway because the sister slept with him anyway. Even though like he was still trying to sleep with his sister anyway. So I was like, oh, it's an insane dynamic.
Oh, but I just feel like, especially in a small country town in Queensland, that is something that would 100% happen. It is...
Just like the famous outsider coming
Sunray.
in.
That's the name of the town.
Sunray.
Sunray.
It's a great name.
1,000 kilometers from the ocean.
I will say the music's amazing in this.
The best
I loved
soundtrack
it.
ever.
I was like, oh, every time a new track came, I'm like,
any panties.
It's
Good
like-
old Barry White.
yeah, because that's like the first scene is him driving in, singing to Barry White. I'm like, it just sets a perfect scene of what's going to be happening in this
Yeah.
film.
Love Serenade.
And one of my favorite segments is when he does yoga in the
Yeah.
in the yard. It's just like, what is he doing? But yes, he would
Of
do
course.
that.
Of
The
course
guy
he
would
would
do
do
that.
that.
Yes,
Yeah.
of course.
No, the
this
writing was
cockhead.
great, and I think the tone of this movie is very daring as well because it's
Yeah.
like walking that thin line of like being very offensive to be very charming. And
I think
a
that's
very thin
part
line.
of it because I think it is trying to play against all the, like we've talked about this before, like playing off the the niches of like, what romances usually are about. Like her like getting undressed for him wasn't sexy at all. It was like an awkward moment.
Yeah,
She's
yeah,
like
yeah.
tripping over herself. She's like smiling awkwardly. She's kind of hunched over. He's just like, and even the way she's like, oh, just take off your shirt. The way he just
Take off
nonchalantly
your pants.
take off your pants. I'm just like, this is not sexy at all.
Yeah, yeah.
This is like not
not.
doing it. His house is doing it for either of them.
It's
just
real. Like, yeah. I love that scene when Dimity has her first kiss with him and she's like,
yeah. She like kicks. She like is, and she's like kicking her legs and stuff. Like she trying to swim away.
it's
Like
real. Yeah. Another
like, this
fish
is-
analogy.
Yeah, I was like, this is so weird.
I
and
love
even,
it.
Even when she goes over the first time, that's great. When they're like, he's like, oh, do you want to come see my big fish? And I'm like,
Oh, here
I
we
literally
go.
like have my hand. I'm like,
Yeah,
oh my
yeah.
god. And then the next scene's like, wow, that's a really big fish. I'm like, oh, it is a big fish. And I think it's like set on my heart. It's all right. Literally 10 seconds later, it's like talking about sex already. I'm like, oh.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
was that
It was-
analogy anyway?
But he also had a big fish.
He also had a big fish. He's just like, well, if I actually have a big fish, they can't say it was like an innuendo. I was like, literally
I do
having-
have a big fish. I want to ask you your opinion on this. In one of the scenes where I think this is where he was trying to seduce the big sister, the fish eyes turn around and look at us. What's that all about? Is it an
My
illusion
God.
or?
I love this scene so much when Dimity is like lying on the couch and watching the fish as her sister's getting fucked on the wall in the next room and he's penetrating her and the fish is moving and
Yeah.
it's like coming alive. What does it mean? Like it's the fish and she's staring right into it. It's looking into her soul, but it's the fish. It's the love that he's talking about that needs to be set free. But it's huge and ugly and it hurts her and it killed their dog, What is this fish? Set it free. It's awful. It's a killer. I love this film so much.
Because it's crazy that because she like runs outside upset, and then he like says, "What did you do to my fish?" When he was kind of the one that like ruined it in the first place. So that was great, and I love that she just sat out the front. She didn't like maybe I need to get away because he's like, "Oh, do you want to come inside?"
Yes,
he
please.
literally is like, "Okay."
Do you want some breakfast? And then I think that's when she realizes that he had gills because they were having bacon for breakfast, and then all the fats came out from the gills, and that's when I was surprised. So, okay, so he has gills, but doesn't he need water to live? Like, how
well,
come
he, in the end,
yeah.
And even that was crazy because we already like when we get to used to these characters, we already know like what they want from him essentially. And when she's like, "Oh, we're gonna get married," and we're like, "Oh no, here's like another lie." She's like told herself because early in the film she's like, "Oh, he took my casserole and he loved it," even though we all know that he went and ate at the restaurant and came back.
Yeah.
And it's like clearly not what have happened. And she keeps making up these stories about like, how great he is and how much he loves his food, how his exes weren't great cooks and stuff. And I'm like, oh my God, she is sold into this story and nothing has
Delulu.
happened. Yeah. And I was like, when she walks up to his house in the dress and he's like, are you getting married? He's like, yeah. And it's like,
Who's the lucky man?
Yeah, who's the lucky man? She's like, you. And it's like, oh, what?
He slams the door in her face.
Yeah, literally slams the door in her
It's
face.
so relatable. I'm all the characters in different ways. I'm Vicky Ann. I'm Dimity. I'm Vicky Ann's delusional, the lies that she tells herself about, what people think of her. I'm Dimity's awkwardness and directness. And I'm Ken Sherry's sleaziness as well. I just see myself in all of them in different ways. It's just an amazing film. And, I've got a really weird, it's not a fun fact, but I have a fact about this film, spoiler alert, but of course at the end, at the silo when Ken Sherry is pushed off, a stunt actor died filming that. And it was one of the only times that, someone's died on set in film. And I think it kind of sparked like a big sort of industry movement towards a bit more safety when it comes to stunt actors. Crazy.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that wasn't the film they used.
No.
I could imagine. I was like,
I don't know actually.
because it doesn't. I'm like thinking of it did look like a rag doll.
Yeah,
why I
it
didn't.
did. It kind of flopped, right?
Yeah, it was like it didn't look like a person. But I'm like, oh my god, if they actually made someone like jump off that to try I'm assuming one of those landing pads
insane,
or whatever.
yeah.
Oh my god, even that scene's insane.
Yeah.
I love that scene when they're both up on the silo,
perfect.
and then even he's like scared to climb the silo as well, which is like he's like, oh, I don't really want to do this. She's like, oh come on, it's fine, you'll be right.
yeah.
And it's
Shaking
just
it.
like great that it's like there is something here about him like not wanting to go up here. I don't know if he.
Afraid of commitment.
Yeah, there's so many things that could have been like, is he literally a fish? He doesn't want to go up there. Yeah, afraid of the commitment, the commit to actually go up there and commit this, like actually tell her the truth and not like gloss over. Even though he glosses over anyway.
Well, he does, yeah, and he
He's like,
delivers this
"Oh,
speech,
yeah."
which is so awful and what is just like a wank basically.
Yeah.
And she just listens to it, and the whole time Dimity is smiling
She's
her grin
smiling,
because she
she's
knows
like,
what she's about to do.
Yeah.
Damn.
And she's just loving it. He's like, look at the birds in the sky, and she's
I'm
like,
those-
haha.
you wouldn't want to cage those birds in. Let them be free.
Wow, Tim, you seem like you memorize Ken
I
Sherry's lines
just
by a
thought-
lot.
I don't know if he did the voice, but it's just like the radio voice. of,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah,
being
such a good.
monotone and kind of like, It just reminds me of when I used to get home late and sometimes I had a radio and it's like those love guru guys. It's like, so what has been happening in our relationship? It is sad to hear that Alison doesn't really recuperate your feelings and maybe you should move on. And it's just like that kind of
Oh my
voice.
god, that was amazing.
Yeah, it was
But it's
great.
just like that kind of like that's what he sounded like. Well,
Yeah.
this guy's so weird. Like just playing the songs and being like spewing the shit.
Oh, I love it. No, I personally like his voice. I think it's very warm and very sensual in a way.
Yeah,
But I think, not many radio hosts have that kind of voice. They're usually very like active.
Yeah, and snappy because
snappy.
young people, they've got
Yeah.
short attention
Because
spans.
it's definitely like radio's completely different now. It's all like just celebrities, right? There isn't really a radio star. It is literally like if they've been on a celebrity show or a celebrity in some way, and then they just put them together with someone else. Like I don't think I haven't listened to radio in like 10, 15 years because I used to love Hamish and Andy when they were on it, but even they were like big comedy celebrities. They
Yeah.
weren't really radio people. Because you think now, I don't even know anyone really, and that isn't like a celebrity. Who's the guy on Australian Idol? I hate that guy. I think everyone hates him.
Jackie O and
No, yeah.
Oh yeah, Kyle and Jackie.
Carl.
Oh, no.
Kyle.
He's such an
Kyle Sandilands.
asshole.
He's
Yeah.
famously hated.
Yeah, by like most of Australia. Apparently only but Queensland. Because I remember he came to do a show and they're like, oh, you bloody Melbournes don't like us and hate our show. And it's like, well, because you're a bloody asshole.
Lefties here in Melbourne, sweetie.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just like, I can't, even him on like Australian Idol, I'm like, I don't know if he's got musical talent or anything, but why is he judging these people?
Because
Like,
he listens to the radio.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm like, but that's what it is now, not like these, like, as you say, like people
Yeah.
built for radio, because
Yeah.
that's like, it's not really a thing anymore. And even when you think about like podcasts, even now, like it is a bit more free flowing. It's not just like, here's kind of like what we're doing. Here's the idea and let's like blow through it. But it does capture that very well. And you talk about like the idea of Australia being so behind when he's in the studio.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, these is all like old studio stuff. And that's like the first thing he talks about.
Yeah. He
And I'm-
complains.
Yeah. And I'm like, oh my God, this guy.
Total asshole, total jerk.
Yeah.
I love him. And Sherry.
Because I love the idea when she goes to the chef at the end and is like talking for advice. And he's like, what he asks him about like the food he eats. He's like, but he always orders the same thing.
Yeah.
Why doesn't he want my prawns? Which is great.
Why does he care about the freshness of the prawns if he never orders them? In fact, he doesn't eat fish or crustaceans. So why is he asking? Because it's a power play. He's he's an asshole.
Yeah, he's playing
because he
it
knows
up.
he knows it's not going to be fresh. So he wants to make sure that they know
But
that he
they
knows.
know, even though it's like this girl that isn't really a great waitress, but she's like, she
I
doesn't
would've
really
said that.
care.
I would have said that. Yeah, they're
And then-
fresh.
That's what I mean. She's just kind of like, and she like thinks about it. And it's like, and she's like, I'll go check. And then I love how he like walks out. And then they have like this big discussion. He's like, they're fresh, they're snap frozen, they're fresh. And he's like, it's just like,
Can I please get the beef?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Get the
He was never going to order the prawns.
Yeah, he was never going to order it. And I love that as well. Like, even like the weirdest, like maybe the weirdest dude in the thing, and he isn't like that weird, really. Because I even love, he like talks and like, oh, you're putting all this music talking about sex and intercourse and stuff. He's like, what's your favorite song? He's like, oh, this. He's like, he's probably singing about the same thing. And that's the same thing again. He's like putting on this idea of what he is when it's just all
Like, this
played
is how
up.
everyone should be. We should all be free loving each other. I have the right way of thinking.
Yeah.
But that's not the thing. It's like we can sing about sex and we can have sex, but yeah, like the chef says, it should be at a kind of equal level of respect and mutual kindness, and you see other people as humans.
He does talk about like love and how he like sees it, and it's a bit more realistic compared to like as
or
Ken
traditional,
Sherry.
Like he says, I would put my wife on a pedestal.
Yeah, it is a bit more traditional.
They're just
in that
opposites.
sense. Even then, for like I would say the 90s, like I know like in the last 20 years, there's been a lot more push for how like people view sex and even like even relationships in general. But even the way he doesn't view it as a way of like openness and freedom. It's just about him having
Getting
sex
what
with
he
her.
wants.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It isn't like he isn't like helping with these ideas and they're all on the same page. It's just like his gratification.
Yeah.
That's the thing. It's like. That's what I mean. It isn't like trying to like, trying to have a polygamous. I can't even say the word.
Pythagoras relationship where we all
One
do
of those,
maths.
get the grid out.
The
and you're like,
three angles.
I'm here, and you guys kind of come in here. But just like, because that even plays against like the whole romantic comedy as well. Like he's not really like the one to fall in love with, right? The one who's had this like relationship with.
Bad boy. He's a bad boy.
Well, he is a bad boy
in some
way.
way.
Like the bad boy.
Yeah. But like you said, he's like doing the weird like Tai Chi outside.
Yeah.
And I love when she's like spying on him, like steps on something, and he's like, do I keep going? He's like, oh yeah, I'll keep going. And she just reminds me, what's the TV show where the guy like looks over and you can't see? I can't remember. That was even hilarious. She's like, hello, like staring.
No, I love it. No, and the thing that I want to discuss as well, because all movies is just a discussion of different ideas. So in this case, do you think that this is the core idea of the movie, like the two perspective of relationship? One is, it's always about what I want. I don't care about what the other partner wants, or about the traditional value. Because Vicky Ann's is the traditional value.
Yeah, she's definitely, that's what
I
she
want to get
wants.
married. I want to fall in love. I want to do things for the family. So is that the core message of this movie, or do you think there's another layer of meaning?
I don't know if it's like the core message, but I think it's something they focused on.
Yeah, it's a huge theme.
Yeah.
But it's also about the two sisters, right? And how they're kind of weirdly codependent in this kind of strange, and how they're opposites as well.
Yeah.
And how they balance each other and how they need each other and how they protect each other.
I love those scenes when they go and have lunch together.
Yeah.
And then when she finds out she's sleeping with him, she's like, doesn't show up to lunch anymore.
Yeah.
And it's such a strange scene, because then when she starts sleeping with him, she says, oh yeah, come back, we'll have lunch together
the
again.
double expectation,
Yeah.
right? But the double standard. But it's like when she doesn't have lunch with her sister, that's more tragic than the betrayal of Ken Sherry, because this female relationships are always going to be more sacred than that weird radio guy next door.
Right? Because that's what's destroyed. Like, because that's like, we get to like the right at the end of the film when they're working together to try and get rid of the body, and they're like throwing him into the water.
That is so weird.
I love the scene.
Yeah, I know, like-
Because she's got the balloon. She's
Yeah, I
saying,
love you.
I love you. And she's like tying it to him. And she's like, don't put, it's not going to sink with the balloon on him. And she's like, but
Up till the like most serious moment, they're fighting, they're bickering. It's amazing.
they're not too worried about they just killed this dude, and they're like, oh, and like you said before, that like boyfriend falling on the chainsaw.
And the way Dimity smiles after she tells Ken Sherry, like she looks away, like she's like trying not to smile.
whether the sisters were like on it together or if it was just something that happened. But that's what I mean. There's so many different things going on in this film. That's why I enjoyed it as well, because it's just a fun, stupid, like romantic comedy.
Yeah.
But there's so many underlying themes that you could like look into more or even try to follow through. Because that's what I like. It even, like I've already said, like it plays off romance comedies well and like deviates completely. Even like the like romantic place they go to eat is like the Chinese restaurant. Like
Where
that's the only
no one
place
goes.
that no one goes to, which is funny. But I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a lot more than I
I'm so
thought.
glad you guys liked it. It is my favorite film of all time. Nothing can top it. And I know the sound mixer. He used to work at Sound Firm, my company. He used to literally just have a room there where he would mix his crazy films. And I never told him that I loved that film, but I always was like, Steve Burgess, I love Serenade. My favorite film.
Does that director make any other movies after Love Serenade?
Yeah, I checked out their IMDb and I saw a few films and I hadn't watched them. They did a lot of TV as well. I find directors often they can find work doing an episode of TV here and there. But there was one film that I was intrigued by. I don't remember what it was called, but nothing that I'd watched. Love Serenade just seemed to be their stick out.
Well, apparently, according to Wikipedia, the director is Shirley Barrett, and Love Serenade was her first movie, and they won the best the award for best movie at the 1996 Cannes Film Festival.
It's amazing.
There you go.
Yeah.
Because that's what I was thinking. I'm like, you don't really get. Not that I watch a lot of Australian films, but
Hey.
but like, I don't know, it just captures something. It's so weird. Like,
It does. It's so Australian.
Yeah,
That's
it's-
another reason I love it.
Yeah.
I really appreciate directors who don't shy away from the Australianness of Australia and Australian characters.
like
And
all the accents are great, and I'm just
Timothy!
like, Timothy.
breathe, Vicky Ann, breathe.
That was great as well. She smacks her on the back. It just sells it even more, which
yeah,
is great.
The sisters
Like,
need each other.
because they're not like, it's not selling it to anything else, but that's what I thought. Obviously I didn't know much of the film going in, but that's why I was like, I enjoyed it so much.
And this is one of the things that we discussed before as well, because the common perception of the movies in Vietnam is that a lot of the directors, they want to make the film look like a
Hollywood film.
a Hollywood film or a different country, like go to all these extravagant places. When the audience watches this, they were like, this is not Vietnam. This is not where I live.
Yeah, it's a disconnect.
Yeah.
Like this weird international. There are a few Australian films who try to do that, where they try to be American. Like, have you watched Predestination? With it's got Sarah Snook. It's this awful sci-fi movie where oh god, spoiler alert. Do you mind?
Yeah, now go for it.
She like is her own mother or something, like with like some stupid time travel thing.
Yeah.
And it's all filmed in Melbourne. It's all Australian actors, all Australian production, but they set it in America. It's
Like
all
it's
American
American
accents,
place.
and it's like such a weird disconnect. And because it's a sci-fi, they kind of get away with it. But it's like why did we stray from our roots? Come on.
Well, that's even the other thing as well. Like, trying to make a film in Australia is tough anyway. Like,
Yeah.
And even like, it's a hard sell to be like, we want to kind of do this like ground roots, very Australian film. And it's like, well, it's going to have no audience.
It's not going to have an
outside of-
overseas
Yeah.
audience.
And
People
that's-
can't stand the accent.
Because
on
we talked
screen.
about that earlier as well. Because what's 20 odd million here, and what's that like? 10% might go watch it, and what's that? That's only a couple of million people. So it's not like the grand stage, which is what they're aiming for. Because we think of like maybe not Australian films, but like Furiosa or like Fall Guy that were like filmed and produced here, but they didn't even hit like what they probably thought these would have been like big movies that made a lot of money. But Furiosa, I think both of them just barely, or even if they did break
But they lost a lot of money. Fall Guy lost money.
Which is sad, 'cause
Furiosa lost money.
even though they're not like Love Serenade, like really grounded Australian films, it's still cool to see them like filmed in Australia. And even like they've all got like the big, big actors and stuff. Chris Hemsworth is still good in Furiosa, but and like seeing like Ryan Gosling running around, it must have been Sydney or whatever, it's fun.
Yeah.
And then like them all like talking like to the police and they're like, all right, mate. And it's it's still cool to hear like the Australian bit, but it's not like an Australian film in like essence or whatever, right?
And I looked into Acme website the other day, and it's weird because it feels like they are promoting co-production between Australia and other countries, because it seems like there are not that many work, or there isn't a strong
Money.
demand.
There's
for
not
film.
enough money in
Yeah.
Australia. Like, we need big investors to come in and spend money on Australian films. And in Australia, to make a film, you're usually working with a budget of somewhere between 1 to 5 million, which is really nothing. And you're relying on the government for funding. And I know films that have gone across with like $100,000 and they're awful, but because the story was good, it works. But it's just so sad. There's just no money. And especially this year has been a really bad, this past kind of 2024 and going into 2025, there's no investment in film. And it's so dead right now out there. And that's the thing, we have to rely on overseas productions coming in and bringing $50 million and giving Australians work, because Hollywood has dominated the film industry, which is so sad. And it's partly our fault. Like
done it to themselves a little bit.
Well, a little bit. It's not exactly our fault that we're conditioned to want to see the American accent on screen and Americans, but when we don't go and, give space to Australian accents and Australian films, we're the ones that are kind of isolating ourselves, I suppose.
Yeah, because we maybe not be engaging with it anyway.
Exactly.
It kind of tells them not to do it.
Yeah.
Because even with like streaming and stuff, the Australian government put in rules like, if you're going to stream here, you need like a certain percentage of like Australian stuff.
Good,
Which is good, but I haven't even watched much of it. There was like a couple of things, it would have been a while ago now, had like Joel Edgerton and stuff. It was like a cop, kind of like a missing persons case, which was interesting, but it's like, I don't know, it's sad that it doesn't get the attention like other films should get.
It's so weird, but yeah, I'm conditioned by it as well. Like, I would rather spend time watching a shitty American show than a shitty Australian show for some reason.
Yeah,
I don't
exactly.
know why. It's just how I've been conditioned. But we need to unlearn that and just start watching Australian films so I can have jobs.
I would like some work.
I would like some work, thank you.
And I think this is a very interesting similarity with the Vietnamese cinema, because nowadays it seems like it's just got some revival, because now there are a lot of young directors. They want to make pure Vietnamese movies. And I think I discussed this with Tim prior, probably because Thailand has just got their first movie nominated in the Oscars. And, and Thailand and Vietnam are just like brothers, but we're always bickering. We always compete, in soccer.
And Thailand got to the Oscars first.
Yep. So now we were like, oh no, they got there.
How dare they? Before us.
Before us. It's a movie about family. So it's called Caring for Grandma, or How to Make a Million from Grandma. I'm sure that you heard of it. And I think it's a very, very touching movie. When you go there, like 99% you will cry at some point. And that movie got shortlisted for the best foreign movie at the Oscars. And all of us were like, oh no, now we have to catch up. Now a lot of young directors, they come in and they get like funding from different companies, from different brands, or like some celebrities, they want to jump into filmmaking as well. And I think there's just that energy that Australia is lacking. We need to have some sort of competition to like, okay, I want to make a movie that represents Australia to America, for example.
Because it's even hard for Australia, because I don't even know how we've even seen in like Americans' eyes. They probably still see Steve Irwin as like
Crocodile Dundee.
He's like the biggest Australian, I would say, that's ever gone overseas that isn't like a big actor or something, right? But even like, because that's what I mean. Like, I think there's the idea of like an Australian, but like what we would probably film and show them, I don't think they would get it, because we have a lot of different humor and like a lot of different. Like, I feel like Australians very sarcastic and very like dry humor at times, where Americans don't really get that. Sometimes they take it as an offense to them, so that I think doesn't translate as well. And like, it's so hard, because you think like, how do you sell like an Australian story to like international audience? Because I think of like, what was his name? Literally the movie Australia with
Baz Luhrmann.
Yeah, Baz Luhrmann.
Christ.
And his stories are like, I don't know, I don't really like him. So that's what I mean. It's tough when it's like, he's kind of like the guy that gets the chance, but like.
And you got Hugh Jackman, you got Nicole Kidman.
Yeah, I know. You got the big Hollywood names, but the story itself is just like, ugh. And even Baz Luhrmann himself, I don't really like.
I don't think
his
he
film.
likes that film, Australia.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Australia wasn't a good film. I do like Baz Luhrmann though. He great in the 90s. But he was doing something really different in the especially editing space with Jill Bilcock, who I know her. No big deal. No, she's partners with my boss. So, part like romantic, I guess. I don't know.
Okay.
But none of Baz Luhrmann's films are Australian, except for Australia. Like you think of Romeo plus Juliet and Moulin Rouge. You know, those are just kind of fantastical, and they're great and they're amazing. And he's a great director, but it's not an Australian film. He's not an Australian director.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's like not quite what you'd want if like
no,
if,
you
if,
don't
like,
want that to be our export.
Yeah, exactly. And I think we don't really get that enough. And I think that's like you said, it's so many different things at play that it isn't just like one thing that would help like push more Australian movies just to like have a chance. But because that's even the thing, like big Hollywood movies barely get a crack at it most of the times now as well. So it's not even like our own industry that's like suffers. It's like Hollywood doesn't know what they're doing half the time. Like they're just like, oh, we need another monster movie. Oh, we need another comic book movie. You know, like we need like an Oscar bait film. And it's just like none of it really hits that well. And it's these odd directors that like, you know, like Robert Eggers that gets a crack at it. It like makes something a bit different and unique. But
yeah. So where do you think the future of cinema in Australia is going to go in the next 10 years?
Oh, God, I don't know. It's so hard to say. Like, basically, since COVID, things have been really slow for film. It's been really hard for productions to get the funding again, and it's also like so dependent on the economy. Like I said earlier, like it's going to depend on the political climate, because Australian films pretty much solely depend on government bodies like Screen Australia, Film Victoria, you know, NITV, places like this to fund their films almost completely. They'll give films $1 million, $2 million, which that'll be their entire budget. So if we are, you know, veering into this kind of Trump space where we're Peter Dutton sort of right-leaning politics space, and we start to dedicate less funds towards the arts, there's just going to be less and less jobs in the Australian, you know, the entire creative industry, but film is going to take a really large hit. And we're seeing it, you know, at companies now. Like there was a mantra and this was, you know, an international mantra, it wasn't just in Australia, was survive to 2025. And also it wasn't just film, it was like a lot of industries, no one has money right now, the economy's bad. And so the idea was to survive to 2025. 2025 is going to be all better, but we're here now and it's not. There's so many films that we were meant to work on that didn't get funding, and we're just hoping that they get funding in the next round, which I think is in August. So that's a really long time we had all these jobs lined up that have just completely fallen through. So I need to skill up in other places. I have worked in film and editing for so long. I guess I could translate some of my skills to advertising, but if the film industry fails, I'm kind of f***ed. Like I don't have any other skills, and it's going to be really hard for that to translate, but I don't see it going very well unless something huge and different happens.
Yeah.
Sad. Sorry, guys.
I mean, that's completely understandable because the Vietnamese cinema was in that stage for a long time, and I think up until now, like when we got the newer names coming in and people realize that, oh, this is something that we can actually make money out of, and this is a very harsh reality, because without all the horrible commercial movies, the Vietnamese cinema wouldn't survive to have all the artistic movies coming to the awards. You know, so I think this is something that Australia will need to figure out. Like they need to make the commercial movie first, make money first, and then when you get support from the audience, that's when you can have more money to reinvest and things like that.
because we don't even really have that anyway. We don't really have like a big commercial films.
That is something that I'm very surprised that Australia doesn't have, because in Vietnam we have so many horrible commercial movies, but because the requirements for entertainment in Vietnam is so high, people are just searching for something to watch all the time, and plus the standard is pretty low as well. Like, but you can imagine, like the population in Vietnam is 90 million. There has to be something for everyone to watch at all times. So they are like pushing out all the content without any quality control. Nothing. So, yep, here's something for you to watch. Watch it. And that's why people have really, really low standard. I think that's something that Australia can explore.
I think it's a cultural thing as well, a bit. Like we're not, you know, we're only 250 years in or whatever. Like we take a lot from Hollywood. So that's the thing where we get a Hollywood movie. It is like our movie anyway. We're not looking to be like, oh, why isn't it more Australian, right? We're just kind of sold whatever American gives us, and we kind of just consume it.
Yeah.
And especially because we're multicultural as well. Like we still take in like we said, a lot of Korean movies, a lot of Bollywood movies and stuff. Like we've got a lot of access to that. when it comes to maybe our own thing, we're not as worried about it, which is a bit sad at the end of the day, because it's like that's like Love Serenade. I'm sad I haven't seen this before, right? Like there's probably tons of great Australian movies that I probably haven't given a chance or had a chance to watch. Yeah, that isn't. What's that horror movie I always think of? That's the one I always think of. Oh, is it Wolf Creek? Wolf Creek, is it?
I haven't watched Wolf Creek. Hello.
No. Well, I used to be really scared of horror movies. I'm much better now. That's probably that'd be like an interesting thing to do on that.
That one's pretty scary.
Yeah, but that's like, I remember, was it in high school when it came out? It was a while ago, but I remember everyone like, oh, this is a scary movie. I ain't watching that. Yeah, exactly.
It's only scary for women. Don't worry.
That's fine then. I better watch it.
So I guess before we wrap up the episode, I want to get some advice for the aspiring filmmakers as well. So Veronica, so if they want to become a professional movie editor like you, well, what kind of skills do they need to have? What kind of training do they need to get?
Well, the thing is, when I started my job at the company that I work at, I came in with pretty much zero expertise. Everything, all the software, all of the product, all of the stuff that I deal with at my job, I would only ever deal with at my job, because you have to pay, thousands and thousands of dollars for this software and to be able to use this equipment. So you can't really train for it. What helped me get my job was a few things. Adaptability, just being able to learn things really quickly. Being extremely software savvy, being able to just see a software and know my way around it and just learn quickly. And then the people connections, which is annoying. I hate that. Part of the reason I did get my job is because I knew a couple of people who worked at my company, and I knew some people who were clients at my company, because I did a lot of free work, because I just wanted to do anything. I just wanted to be somehow involved in the filmmaking process and have a resume. And I did a lot of free work, assistant editing, a little bit of editing as well. And that got my foot, it got me the job, essentially. So you have to, and then another thing is really, being charming and luck. At this point, I know the stuff that I do right now, I'm not an amazing, I'm a good worker and I'm proud of my work, but I'm not the best that there is for my role. I know that there's someone that could be better, but I love my work. I love my coworkers. I have a good attitude, and that really shows. And I don't think they would ever even think about replacing me, because I am the company in a way, in like a personality sense. I'm the soul of the company. Things like that you can't kind of train for or practice. You just have to be authentic, which is so much harder. But, I try to implement that in every aspect of my life. Not to life coach you guys out here.
That's all right. That's a part of it. It's a part of it.
No, I think that's a very good advice, because it applies to all industries, not just creative. And I think there's a saying at some point they said that they like to work with the people that they like before they will work with the people that can do the job. Yeah. Because you can train someone to do the job, but you can't train someone to be likable.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And reasonable as well.
Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
And the final question that I have for you, Veronica, is if you can edit any movie of any time, of any period, what would that be? You cannot say Love Serenade.
That's not a bit unfair.
Yeah. Because I knew that she would have that option, right? So, any other movies?
I think, staying on Australian film, it would have been amazing to have some sort of hand on Wake and Fright. I don't know if you guys have heard. It's absolutely, speaking of quintessential Australia, it's this quintessential Australian film about a teacher who's been sent out to absolute bush to go, teach children, and then he's on his way back to Sydney, and he gets kind of stuck in a town, and he gambles all his money, and he gets stuck with these absolutely messed up Australians that go and they shoot roos and they drink piss and they beat each other up, and it is so scarily Australian that you can't look away, and it's so moving. And that's a real horror film, is when there's no monster except for the monster. It's very kind of toxic masculinity. It really looks at that in the most amazing way. It's such an amazing Australian film. I would have loved to have been part of the process for that.
And I think that's a good way to end this episode. That is the end of the episode. Let us know what you think about the conversation in the comment section below, and smash that like button.
Ring the bell and subscribe as well, and you better be back next time.
And we will see you in the next episode.